The following is a reconstruction based on declassified forensic archives for educational purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate any methods shown. This record is as follows.
You think you know what a spy plane looks like. You're thinking of the U-2 or the screaming silver A-12 ox cart, but the historical record suggests otherwise. By the mid-60s, those eyes in the sky were increasingly vulnerable to Soviet radar. Langley didn't need a faster jet, they needed a ghost. According to CIA records buried for decades, Project Aquiline was a notable endeavor so ambitious it sounds like a fever dream. The goal? Build a 6-foot bird of prey designed to carry a specialized power cell. It wasn't just stealth, it was biological mimicry. If a Soviet operator saw a blip, he wouldn't see a multi-million-dollar asset, he'd see a wandering buzzard. But as the files from the Office of Special Activities show, trying to replicate the laws of physics turned into a technical challenge. Records indicate the agency's biggest obstacle wasn't Moscow, but the very nature they were trying to simulate.
The man tasked with managing this mechanical marvel was Charles Murphy of the CIA's Office of Special Activities, working with engineers at McDonnell Douglas. In 1965, the agency handed them a high-stakes mission of an engineering problem. How do we document Soviet over-the-horizon radar without escalating tensions? Murphy's answer? A 6-foot wingspan glider with a tiny 4-horsepower heart. To the guys at Langley, this wasn't just hardware, it was a legend. In CIA slang, that's a cover identity. Only this time, the agent was a frame of fiberglass and cameras disguised as a hawk. But here's the question the agency couldn't answer. How do you cram a high-res camera and an experimental power source into a bird without making it fly like a brick? Memos from the era state that nature doesn't like being copied.
To stay in the air for weeks, Project Aquiline's blueprints called for a power source that wouldn't quit. Archival records indicate the CIA intended to use a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. Translation: a miniature specialized battery. Imagine a mechanical bird with a sensitive power core soaring over the USSR. Internal safety memos suggest it was a complex situation for a diplomatic crisis. One engine stall and you've just dropped a sensitive propulsion component in the Kremlin's backyard. At Area 51, the Graybeards realized the bird was aerodynamically unstable. It didn't just stall, it would go into an unrecoverable descent into the desert floor. The archival record shows that every time a prototype was lost, the recovery crew had to treat the scene with extreme caution. The stakes were climbing, and the bird hadn't even left Nevada. By the late 60s, Aquiline moved to the most secretive real estate on Earth, Groom Lake. This was the Wild West of drone tech. There were no pilots, just technicians on the ground handling remote controls that barely worked. According to declassified cables, the bird was a beast to fly. Recovery was even worse. They actually tried catching the asset mid-air with nets attached to poles on moving vehicles or even helicopters. It was often a significant complication. Broken wings, compromised sensors, and millions of dollars ending up as scrap metal. Was the agency chasing a ghost? Rewind to the original mission and you'll see why they were so determined to make this albatross fly. Why the obsession? One word: Sorry Shagan. That was the Soviet secret anti-ballistic missile test site. The US could see it from space, but we were deaf to the electronic data. We needed a collector on the ground. Aquiline was designed to be the ultimate fly on the wall. It was supposed to land in Soviet territory, act as a stationary relay station, and wait for recovery or transmission. But the agency was learning a hard lesson. The more sensors they crammed in, the heavier the bird got. Eventually, it wasn't an eagle, it was a lead weight with feathers. With the budget hitting nearly $100 million in today's money, the leadership at Langley was approaching the project conclusion. The desert heat at Groom Lake was substantial, but then came the snag nobody saw coming. Documented reports describe a series of catastrophic airframe failures caused by local residents. According to project veterans, actual hawks began engaging the CIA's drone. To a territorial predator, this $100,000 asset was a rival. These aerial confrontations ended with the super spy spiraling into the scrub brush. Think about that. If the agency couldn't even fool a bird in Nevada, how were they going to fool a Soviet radar technician? The record suggests something was seriously off. The true science of Aquiline was the Perch mission. Memos indicate the bird was designed to land near Soviet communications cables and just wait. This required a level of autonomy that barely existed in 1970. The landing gear, disguised as bird talons, was an engineering challenge. Historical analysis suggests that if the bird didn't land on a precise dime, the sensitive payload could be compromised. Every test flight was a reminder that the agency was trying to sprint before they could even crawl. Was the mechanical bird becoming a multi-million-dollar anchor? Fast forward to the Caspian Sea, and the pressure was about to boil over. While the CIA was struggling with its tiny bird, the Soviets were building monsters. Satellite photos revealed a massive, striking shape on the Caspian Sea, the Ekranoplan. The agency was desperate for a close look. Project Aquiline was the Hail Mary. The plan? Launch from a disguised merchant ship, fly low over the Caspian Sea monster, and collect electronic signatures from the hull. But the bird's engine, a specialized internal combustion system, was a constant point of failure. One stall over the water, and the most classified tech in the U.S. arsenal belongs to the opposition. The whole project was one glitch away from a global event. Despite the incidents, Aquiline was quietly pioneering the future of unmanned flight. This was one of the first aircraft designed with low observable characteristics. Long before the F-117, the CIA was testing radar-reducing shapes on this mechanical bird. By mimicking nature, they inadvertently helped develop the code on how to hide from man-made sensors. But stealthy didn't mean reliable. In one test, a prototype went rogue, wandered off course, and nearly entered civilian airspace. The Graybeards at Langley were done. They wanted an operational tool, not a science fair project. The clock had finally run out. By late 1971, the burn was too high. Project Aquiline had chewed through millions with zero successful operational missions. A scathing internal audit labeled it technically overambitious, which is CIA speak for a significant setback. The dream of the biological false flag was over. The final blow? The specialized battery integration was scrapped. Records indicate nobody wanted to explain why a sensitive asset crashed near a civilian area. Without that power, the bird's range was severely limited. The project was boxed up. But the lessons learned at Groom Lake didn't stay in the dark. Look at a Predator drone today. You're looking at the legacy of Project Aquiline. This project was a true ancestor of modern long-endurance UAVs. The obsession with sniffing signals from a distance led directly to the platforms used in modern observation roles. The bird stopped flying in 1972, but its flight path led straight to the digital landscape of the 21st century. The agency learned that to secure information, you sometimes have to fly like a predator. What happened to the prototypes at Groom Lake? Records remain classified on the exact count, though estimates suggest 5 were built. Some say they were decommissioned. Others believe one may be tucked away in a classified hangar. A silent witness to the time the CIA tried to out-evolve nature. The truth? Still classified. Project Aquiline was a high-tech ghost that never migrated. But while the agency was trying to fly over Russia, intelligence historians point to the Bulgarian DS with KGB assistance, perfecting a much smaller, much more sophisticated form of tradecraft on the streets of London. If you thought a specialized bird was compelling, wait until you see what was hidden inside a standard rain umbrella. A tiny pellet, a rare compound, and a brush pass that investigators believe concluded the mission in broad daylight. That story, it involves the widely documented case of Georgy Markov, and it's even more remarkable than fiction.